With Tadasana or mountain pose, you can really have your hands anywhere, hands out to the side, just to feel really open. Send the breath into your body, or your hands in prayer that I prefer. I just kind of bring some time in to reset throughout your practice. The main things that you really want to think about when you're in your Tadasana or mountain pose is to have your feet in line with your hips. I like to place my hands on my hip bones, so there's two really bony bits, and just have the fingertips directed towards the ground. Now, if your feet are in line with your fingers, you know they're in the right spot. If they're a little further out, you can't bring them in alignment. It's just a good sign, bring them in. And if they're too close together and your fingers are further out, bring them out just a little bit. So that's just a nice little indication. Now from here, I like to have my knees a little bit soft, because ideally you want your tailbone reaching towards the ground. That's going to start to draw your belly in. So you're already starting to switch on your bandhas and get that nice core, the strength through your trunk fired up. The great thing about this as well is once you start to do that, you come into your neutral spine position as well. So you're protecting your back, you've got this beautiful alignment, the core's already fired up, and then it's good to go for all your add-on poses, which are all formed from your basic mountain pose on Tadasana. So downward dog, let's say we're moving from Tadasana or mountain pose. So once again, your feet are roughly hip width apart, and you can just soften the knees to get into this. There's so many variations, as you know from my class, so many variations to get into it. But if you were to walk your hands out, you want your wrists roughly in line with your shoulders for this one. Too far in, really hard to create balance. Too far out. Well, I've never done this before, but it's quite a lot of work on the shoulders, I can honestly say right now. So relatively in line with the shoulders here. And then it's more about picking up the hips, I find. If my concentration comes to the hips and the hips are high, kind of sets up the rest of the alignment. Yes, the purpose is to release through the hamstrings and start to strengthen through the front. But I find if you think about picking up the hips, once you start breathing, you're going to relax into it. The heels are going to start to melt down, whether you've pedaled out the feet or just stayed static. That's automatically getting into the hamstrings anyway. So if you're already working from picking up the hips, which is why I like to cue the breath, inhale through the back of the body, because it creates the breath coming up to the hips, and exhaling, letting all the air out, creates a little bit more of that lovely A-frame, then everything's just going to click into place anyway. So I just imagine that, honestly, I imagine that my body's like a coat hanger and I'm the pantsuit. So the coat hanger's picking me up towards the ceiling and I'm just hanging up and over it, just letting my hips reach towards the sky. Now for all fours, there's many ways you can do this. For people with really bad wrist issues, just come down onto your forearms, it's perfectly fine. Just want to be aware that you're not dumping into your shoulders here, and you want to stay active through the spine so we can build up the strength in the back body. So let's imagine that your wrists are okay and we're keeping the wrists in line with the shoulders, the knees roughly in line with the hips. Okay, you want to create that nice neutral spine. So from what I mean is there's a little dump that people tend to create because it's such an effort to change poses. So you're straight away like, oh, I'm here. Yep, great. So now we want to switch on, create things active so we can protect the body. So if you think about drawing your tailbone towards the wall behind you and reaching the crown of the head forward, that will automatically draw your belly in. Once again, switching on your bandhas, you call your power center. And then you've got this nice, beautiful, straight, neutral spine happening. You want to soften the elbows here, just so you're not dumping through the shoulders, because that will lead to shoulder pain pretty quickly. And it's also really uncomfortable on the wrists. So just nice and soft through the elbows, working from the core. And then from there, you've got your spinal balance poses. You can do your cat-cow, which is a personal favorite of mine. which is definitely going to come up in classes. You've got your moves into child's pose or plank from here, or back to downward dog. So there's lots of options that you can take from an all fours position. So child's pose. There's many different ways you can do this. I personally prefer having the knees out. And the reason I like doing that is it just allows for my upper body to sink in between my forehead to melt down, and that creates a lot more length through my spine. And as someone who's always looking for that extra stretch, that extra release through the spine, this is just so delicious and it's such a beautiful release. It's really where I want to be headed. It is more of a relaxation point, so if you are kind of working through more transitions, perhaps to come into your upward dog, you want to have the knees a little bit closer, as long as there's enough room in the stomach area to do that. So your hips are traditionally on your heels and your forehead's just melting down. But notice how there's now this curve in my spine, which is why I prefer the alternative variation. We're reaching the fingertips long. Now, some people do express in my classes that they tend to cramp through their feet. So your alternative is to just curl the toes underneath the feet and reach along, that's fine. Whatever's going to work for you in your child's pose or balasana. We'll do Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. So it starts off, remember how I said your beginner's poses are basically your advanced stuff is more your add-ons. So it traditionally starts off from your Tadasana or mountain pose position. Of course you can get into it other ways, but it's just basically stepping one foot back. And then you want to have the toes of the back leg slightly in and then the front leg soften. And you want to think of turning the hip towards the wall behind you, because this is an external rotation of the hip. So what we're looking for here is building up strength through the legs. Definitely as you draw the feet together, you're going to get that work through the upper body. Obviously holding the arms out for a long time, you're going to get some work through the arms. So it is an overall full body release. But we're really starting to open up those hips and just give you a little release through the hips. So yeah, you just want to have your back toes. You want to think about grounding through the back pinky toe, and then the front knee is in line with your second toe. So you can always see the big toe, and that's just going to help you protect the knee as you begin to open up the hips and work into the upper body.